All righty. Good afternoon, y'all. Welcome to this is the third Torque Live that we've done. So we've done a live on the importance of nearshore, offshore, and how to run very good teams for nearshore, offshore. And then we've done another one around what was the other one around? I forgot. But this is the third. I know it's the third. So excited to have these ladies. We were chatting backstage of our favorite airports. I will tell you this: these women have gone to a lot cooler places than I have. I said Salt Lake City, and these women go Singapore and India and Dubai. And I was like, well, that's not me. So these women are awesome. I'm super pumped to hang over the next 30, 45 minutes. If you are tuning in and watching, please say, hey, we'd love to hear from you. Like I said, this is really, anytime a company can go live and interact with folks, it is absolutely a networking event. I'm really big on networking. And so please say, hey, we'd love to hear from you. But I want to go and dive in and introduce these amazing women. I'm not. Y'all are going to introduce yourselves. But let's start out. Navi, if you want to give an intro, who you are, what you do, and then Diane, you can go next.
Sure, sounds good. Hey everyone, good afternoon, good morning. Happy to be here. I'll introduce myself and then we'll be talking more about accessibility and AI today, which is the hot topic. Hey everyone, I am Navya, a software developer at Adobe, and I aim to build inclusive and good design systems for Adobe. And that would be, we will be discussing today. Dan,
I
over to
love it.
you now.
I love it. Diane, go ahead.
Great. Hi. Really excited to be here. My name's Diane Haynes. And after a long career, way too long career in tech, mostly in biotech and software, I've actually gone fractional for the last year after a successful exit of a company. And so most of my work is not surprisingly with clients who are AI companies or doing AI, but also I'm doing some teaching for some graduate business schools as well. So
That's awesome.
really great, excited to be here. It's a great topic and excited to talk more about it.
Yeah, I want one guest to be like, I'm really not excited to be here. That would be wild if somebody was like, I really don't want to be here. But anyways, pumped to have you two here. All right, so I've joked too. It was funny. I was talking to my wife before this, and I was like, hey, like I'm leading this panel. She goes, what's it on? I go, I don't know. I go, the women that I have know though. So really excited to talk about AI accessibility with you too. So first off, I want to start. Can you all talk about just how your work intersects with AI and accessibility, just to kind of give a little bit more detail, set the stage for the listeners who watch this now and in the future? How does your work intersect specifically with AI and accessibility? Navia, go ahead.
Sure. Thanks, Taylor. So I think my journey with accessibility, honestly, it took its time. I have been an engineer for almost a decade now, and in my early years of my career, accessibility was, just a checkbox, just an afterthought. It's something that you look at the very end, if at all. I think that changed when I joined the design systems team at Adobe Express. That's when accessibility became the thing and not an afterthought, but a foundation. And suddenly the conversations shifted to where the first question earlier used to be, does it look good? To now, can and everyone use it? And that also shifted something within me. And I think around that time, when I was learning about accessibility and design systems, I also attended a lot of accessibility conferences and boot camps, and it was eye opening. Like I still remember when I navigated the website with just a screen reader and keyboard, and I was honestly struggling. Like, how do I do it? How do I not do it? And it just dawned upon me, like, if I, as a fully able user, is finding it so hard, what would be it to someone who is actually needing these things?
For
So
sure.
since then, I think accessibility has become a core lens of what I bring at work. At Adobe, also, I work on building accessible web components. And I just want to make sure that the components that we are building is accessible for all. So it's not perfect, it's just a start. We are also thinking of how we can integrate AI and Figma tools to make fasten this work, make it more productive. It's just a start, but it's an exciting time, and I am super pumped.
I love that. I love that. Diane, what is talk about how it's all intersected with you?
Sure. I think of two really good examples in my career that the two intersected. I'm sorry, the accessibility really intersected what I did. So most of the time, I've usually run and managed product or marketing teams. I remember really distinctly working at a hospital. We were designing a website, and we had this beautiful website that our designers had designed. And we actually did some user testing, which, again, you should do. And what we realized is most of our patients were actually over 60 years old, and they were trying to use our website and they couldn't read it because the font was so small. And so that was I still remember that moment of like, oh yeah, it's really pretty, but it doesn't work for our audience, right? And this really came home really strongly for me this year. As I mentioned, I do some work with local business schools, and I was a graduate advisor for a capstone program for the Portland International Airport locally here.
There you go.
And
Yeah,
the,
we're
and
talking
the
about that
project, yeah, and the project was about accessibility. And so we did a research project, really looking at the passenger and visitor experience. And I was reminded and shocked again. We did a massive survey and did a bunch of analysis of how many people, like when you think about accessibility, there's a tendency to think, oh, there's only a sub-segment of the population that has accessibility issues. And when we did this survey, it's really remarkable how many people actually have accessibility issues, either permanently or temporarily, or they're impacted because, for example, at the airport, they're helping a passenger get to the airport or picking someone up. And accessibility is all in our lives, whether it's permanent or it's temporary, or there are people who are in our lives. So it just reminded me how important it is to pay attention to this.
Absolutely. Can y'all define, for folks like me who may not understand accessibility, just in your own words, what is accessibility? Navia, you can start.
Like whenever we talk about accessibility, the classic example that we always give is a person in a wheelchair, right? So
yeah.
we always talk about, let's say if there's a building which only has stairs and it doesn't have a ramp or an elevator, we often say that that a disabled person, a person in a wheelchair, cannot really go into that building, right?
Sure.
So that's where we talk about accessibility in very general sense. But as Dan just said, that disability is not something that is permanent. It can be temporal as well. So just imagine that you're a cyclist and you are wearing gloves, right? And you now need to use your phone, but you cannot use the touch screen on your phone because you are wearing gloves. So that's again a temporal thing. Or just imagine that you are a pregnant lady, or you have a child in your hand and you have a grocery bag in another hand and you're trying to open the door. That's also inaccessible. So anything that hinders you or doesn't give you access to things is making you disabled or inaccessible. Now coming to the web, like these are real life examples that we always talk about.
That was good. I appreciate that.
Now coming to the web, we talk about accessibility in terms of how you can use the web as a person who has maybe some hearing aid problem, or some person who has a vision disability, right? Or maybe a person who has dyslexia. We call it the 3Ds.
Sure.
So anyone who has a problem or is finding it hard to access the internet because the internet is not made for those people who have internet has not catered to the requirements of these users, that's where we lead to inaccessibility or disabilities. So yeah,
that makes sense. I love that. That was good. Diane, do you have anything else to add on that?
Boy, that was a great description.
I know, that was great.
I can't do very much, but I guess I just wanted to reiterate, it is really about making things usable and inclusive for everyone. I think there is a tendency to really focus on people with disabilities. But as Nadia brought up, there are situations where anyone can have problems with accessibility. And, one of the examples that came back to me from the airport, I'm all about the airport right now.
I love it.
There was this example of signage in the airport, and the signage is great. It's all over the place, and it's very large, and it's digital. But an interesting perspective was some of the passengers who were in wheelchairs described the situation where they could not read the signs because you needed to be at standing height.
Interesting.
So it just changes your perspective. So when you were seated, you could not read the sign. So it's just interesting things like that that I
Yeah.
think it's not as obvious when things are inaccessible.
Sure.
And so that's why it's really important to design with that in mind, and make sure that something that you think might be accessible by all, you don't know unless you're going to do some testing and design with that in mind. So I think
I
she
love
had a
that.
great description of it.
I love that. So Navi, you mentioned that the internet as a whole isn't necessarily built with folks, that need to access it. Let's kind of dive into kind of the topic around how is AI helping and kind of bridging the gap here. So where do you see AI making the biggest impact for folks with disabilities today?
That's an amazing question. I'm not sure whether I'll be able to answer that fully.
Yeah, I feel like
But
we could probably just talk about that question for the next hour. So yeah.
but yes, so of course we are getting there when it comes to accessibility and AI. So just like earlier, we didn't have auto-generated captions, right? We didn't
Yep.
have all text to images. How I see AI helping accessibility is now we cannot no longer give an excuse that you cannot make a thing accessibility compliant because I lack maybe the workforce for it.
Sure.
Because now AI is providing me those auto-generated captions. Maybe it's doing it right or wrong. That's another topic that we can talk about later, right? But at least we have the capability, and AI
Yeah.
is just giving us that push to get it out there and not have that excuse anymore that you cannot make your website accessibility compliant. So we have tools now, right, which generates captions for us. We have tools now that describe the image for us, giving us the alt
Right.
text. We have tools now which the Figma plugin that came out recently, having that MCP server, you just give the tool the link to the Figma doc, and it will create a web component for you, completely accessible, maybe
That's
or may
awesome.
not. But
Yep.
yes, so we are getting there. And that's where I see the role of AI. However, having said that, I think the problem is the training data, where we have, the training data that we are providing AI with. So, because for the last 30 years, we have been building websites and web components, but maybe they are simple HTML semantic tags. They are
Sure.
not accessibility compliant in the first place. That's why the output that we are receiving from these AI tools may also not be accessibility compliant. But
Okay.
yes, we are getting there.
I love it. I love it. Diane, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think the excuse is no longer there.
Sure.
Nobody can say anymore they don't have the resources to do it. In addition to having these tools, I think the other area where I see AI really having a lot of utility for us for accessibility is in testing,
Interesting.
because
Okay.
we're able to automate a lot more of the testing, which is again going to help us get that data that I was talking
Yeah.
about to really help make sure that we are building accessible experiences. So I think that's another area that I see this huge boon of having AI bots and things like that to help us do more testing than we've been able to necessarily do before, and we would have to recruit folks who
Yeah.
had disabilities and others, and these are the types of things now with more automated way to do that. We can replicate some of that.
Let me ask you this. I'm kind of going off the cuff here, so welcome to being moderated by me. Do you all think, and whoever could take a stab at this first, in the conversations that y'all have with friends, colleagues, Diane, you obviously do some consulting, is accessibility being talked about more than it ever has, about the same, or is it still being pushed to the back? I don't know if anybody wants to take a stab at this right now.
Okay, I would say I'm seeing the shift.
Okay.
Maybe because now accessibility is now maybe considered as a hammer because of the new regulations, the in place because of the European legislations that we have in place,
Sure.
that you have to make
Sure.
your website accessibility compliant, right? So we like it or not, we have to do it. Otherwise, the companies will be fined, right? So I would say I'm seeing that shift where accessibility is now not considered as an afterthought. It's been considered as a first step whenever you are designing something. So
Okay.
whenever I talk about accessibility, I always talk about this analogy of a blueberry muffin, right? So let's assume
I
that you
love
are
blueberry
creating a
muffins. Me
blueberry
too.
muffin
Love
and
this.
you
Love your
cannot
analogies.
you cannot stuff the blueberries after the muffin has been made, right? You
Right.
have to bake them from the very start. So that's where accessibility is also coming into picture. We have that notion of shifting left from design to to the engineers, to the product, and then to testing. So that
Okay.
shift is definitely happening. But to add one more point to what we just talked about, the role of AI and accessibility, I also wanted to piggyback on what Dan just said about the role of testing, right? So now we have so many plugins that they do a quick scan of your website and they tell us whether you are following the A's or the double A's or the triple A's of the W3C community when it comes to
Yep.
accessibility.
Yep.
Another shift that I also see in AI and accessibility is and that's what really amazes me. So for example, if you are navigating a website and you have to go through, let's say, 3 clicks, or you have to go through 3 tabs, but just imagine having a website where you can just talk to a AI agent and it does that work for you. You don't
Super
have to
cool.
go through those multiple clicks or multiple
Yeah.
tabs. And I think that's where the real power lies of AI, and to make the web accessible for all. So
That's cool. Diane, curious in your circles, how's it being talked
Yeah.
about?
It's interesting. I would love to say the world is becoming more aware of these things, but I
Sure.
actually had a really interesting conversation recently with someone who really put it to a point to me, where she said to me that it was really because of COVID and everyone having to go work remotely and live remotely, that it created
Interesting.
a situation where all of a sudden a lot of people who did not experience accessibility
Right.
issues started to expect, because now you're not in the room.
Sure.
And now all of a sudden everyone's experiencing audio problems, visual problems, connection problems. So
Interesting.
it caused this situation where it created more of a level playing field.
Hmm.
And so as a result, people became more aware of the issues that people, frankly, who have either disabilities or accessibility issues dealt with every day.
Yeah.
So I would love to say that we all woke up and
Sure.
figured it out. I don't know if that's the case, but I thought that was a really interesting perspective that she had. That she's like, well, welcome to what my life is like every day. And I'm glad it happened from that perspective, that people realized and had a lot more awareness because of that.
So do you think since 2020, do you think there's been a more of an emphasis on accessibility in your circles?
Absolutely. I mean,
Okay.
I've seen it, again, because people are having to experience it themselves, or they're
Right.
having to help others. A great example, simple example, is joining webinars and panels like this. And,
Yeah.
everyone's just used to the note takers and the recordings and all of this being available. I get really annoyed when I don't get a recording anymore. I don't have a note taker anymore. We just gotten used to it, and
Yeah.
they're not always right. But that just having that and realizing that these are tools that are automatically available to us, and that everyone's like, well, who took notes in these meetings before? I don't even remember doing
Yeah.
these things. Or
Yeah.
who actually, frankly, who goes to the webinars anymore? I just watch the recordings or read the notes. So it's
Sure.
just become more of the fabric of how we work, which
Yeah.
has I think, made people more productive in that perspective. But I definitely feel like accessibility, and again, maybe it's because of what this person told me about, is because more people are facing some of those inaccessibility issues, that it's become more front of mind for people.
I love that. Let me again. I'm getting some train of thoughts here, so bear with me. Let me ask you this: based off accessibility, what are some key, like, can you give real life practical examples of how you've used AI? I know you've talked about testing, Navi, we talked about obviously transcription on the screen, the captions. Is there anything y'all can share specific of how you've brought in AI to your workflow to help with like give like real life examples? Navi, do
Mhm.
you want to
Of
start?
course, of course. Yeah,
Okay,
I
go
think
for it.
there are multiple. So I think the first thing that we did was used AI. We wrote some cursor rules.
Okay.
to test our application for accessibility. So what we
Okay.
did was we integrated Axe as well as Playwright, and we wrote cursor rules for the same. Now what happens is whenever you are running your end-to-end test as a Playwright suite, it automatically does the accessibility checks as well. So that's the first thing that we did to integrate AI with our code base. Another good thing that we did was Adobe is all about creations, right? So we talk about a lot of images and a lot of content is AI generated. And we also have to put a lot of text on our images that we are
Okay.
generating out of our use case. So we also did the alternative text using the AI, which sees the image. And I have a very interesting story for that. So we were just testing some of the AI agents that we had, and we gave it a photo of a desk. And the desk had four huge things as props kept on it. And we gave four different agents this particular image. And the output came was very different for all the four AI agents. One was just describing the desk as the protagonist of that photograph. One was just describing one of the prop. One was just talking about the background. So I think these are places where AI and accessibility is making a huge deal, and
I love
that's
that.
the way forward. Yeah.
I love that. That's cool. That's really, really cool. Diane, any practical examples of conversations you've been in?
Yeah, I mean, I think these similar examples of using AI to really test for things like screen readers, for example. This was something that was pretty difficult to do before that you can
Yeah.
do really easily now. And as you know, as Navia talked about, making sure there's alternate text and all these other things, checking how, can you use this without using a keyboard so you don't have a mouse, for example. These are
Right.
things that you can use AI to test for now that perhaps before you were not able to do, which is, I think, really important.
I love that. I love that. Let me ask you all this. So obviously gave some practical examples. We're talking about how it helps. What are some hidden dangers? Right. So we're talking about like where can people get too reliant on it and it messes up? Like where, like I'm kind of curious if there's any hidden dangers that you can speak to.
Yeah, I can to maybe
Yeah, go
start
ahead.
us off on this. I think like anything with AI, I talk a lot about how combining AI with the human resources is really important. We talked about just meeting notes, for example, these note takers. If any of you actually read some of these meeting notes, you'll know that they're not always accurate and they need to be reviewed. And so I think that is just a small example in general about where some of the dangers are. It doesn't always get it right. The other one that Navia brought up is that sometimes bias is introduced because the data that's being used by the AI is not representative of enough of the situations to be able to test. So I think these are some of the examples. If you rely on AI too blindly without checking it or making sure that you have representative data, you can end up with an incorrect result or really steering yourself the wrong way.
Okay, that makes sense. Navia?
Yeah, just piggybacking on what Dan said, I also have a similar experience. So, I was very funny. Creating, I was creating some slides for my talk in October, and I was generating a picture of a man and I with a guide dog. And every time I was creating this picture, I was given a man with either sunglasses or an eye patch.
Yeah.
So it was completely biased on that, a blind people need to have something on their eyes. So I think we need to take it with, of course, AI is great. It's a good tool for
Sure.
assisting, but we have to take it with a pinch of salt and make sure that we are not just following everything blindly, as Dan said. So there's a lot of bias. There's a lot of
Yeah.
hallucination that is out there, and we need to be very
Well,
mindful of.
and I feel like, and this, listen, as a non-technical guy, right? I mean, my entire job is just to talk on the internet, which is crazy. But so as like a non-technical guy, I have heard, listened to podcasts and done a little reading, aka Twitter, and it seems like AI is not where it needs to be based off of how much chatter is out there. And I think you just made a good point where it's like you still gotta, I guess they call it human in the loop. Like you can't just totally rely on AI because you're going to have some issues. I mean, thoughts Either one of y'all have thoughts on that?
Yeah, I have a really good example.
Here we go. Love it.
I did a talk about AI and HR, and one of the examples that was a really great case study was there was this company, HireVue, that creates video interview and assessments. And
Yeah, I've heard of
again, I
them.
don't know if you
Yeah.
all have had to apply for jobs or know people apply for jobs. But a lot of these, like, you're submitting videos now, like not just submitting resumes. You're actually submitting like a 1-minute video. You're supposed to answer these 4 or 5 questions, right? So it was already a lot of work to read resumes. Now you're having to watch all those videos. So this company creates this assessment program that basically ingests these videos and then analyzes people's answers, analyzes their facial expressions and everything, and rates you. So what happened, though, they used AI to do this. And they came under a lot of backlash because they were analyzing facial expressions. And the reality is that people's facial expressions, the way they respond, their speech patterns, it's not universal. It can change due to culture or context or disabilities. And so they were finding as a result that the AI was actually predispositioning and judging and rating candidates who maybe had a slight speech impediment. Maybe their expression was a certain way. Maybe they didn't smile as much as the AI wanted it to. And so it was actually a biased evaluation of those candidates. So this company actually had to retire this AI tool because they got a lot of backlash. I mean, it was like 19 million interviews that they had analyzed, but they found that there was bias as a result.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I have also
go ahead.
Sorry, when Dan said about this company, I also got reminded of a funny story that I came across. So in terms of accessibility and AI, so nowadays we have a lot of plugins, right? They scan your website and tell whether the website is accessibility compliant or not, and companies go by those plugins. But these plugins don't offer you a protection plan that yes, this is accessibility compliant. There is no protection plan there. So as a result, a lot of these companies were just simply relying on these AI plugins. But turns out they were not really accessibility compliant, and they were later sued for millions of suits. So that's, again, there are a lot of biases. It's not accurate data. A funny story there was when Twitter changed its handle to X. When you go to the screen reader on Apple. Sorry?
I said I'm still upset about it. Go ahead.
Yeah. It was announced, instead of X, it was announced as close. So on the screen reader. And it was so hilarious. Yeah.
Close.com.
Now they have changed it, but yes.
That's too funny.
So that's what was happening before.
So I think this is kind of a broad statement. You all can give me some thoughts, but that's why I just feel like AI, it's not replacing anybody yet. It's more of an aid to, because everything we're saying, it covers more ground. It allows us to do more, but it's not replacing. Is that because it still doesn't sound like it's perfect?
Well, I would say that I think it's replacing some aspects of our jobs or people's jobs. I would love to be. I like to say that it's replacing the parts of my job that maybe I don't want to do or are more boring, right? Exactly. Like, the way you used to have to research other companies, right? It's kind of like, it reminds me with the internet. I'm going to date myself, but it kind of reminds me, it was like when you had the internet, it's like, wow, you could do research much differently than you used to be able to do. And that's how I see AI. I don't want to be so optimistic and say, hey, there's jobs that are not going to go away. I think there certainly are jobs that are going to go away, but the way I like to look at it is, it's not that those jobs are going away and no other jobs are going to replace it. It's just the jobs are changing and there will be other jobs. A great example is when car factories started to introduce robots into the car factories. Yeah. Jobs definitely went away, right? But the jobs got added because people had to program the robots. They had to service the robots. And those jobs paid more than the jobs before. So I think that there's definitely some things that are going away, but the way I look at it, it's more of AI is going to be a tool that helps us do some of the more mundane, the grunt work, hopefully a little bit easier, automate that so that we can end up spending more time on the more strategic work, the more difficult work that really does take human discernment. That's my very optimistic
I
view
love
on it.
that. No. I think it makes sense. I think it makes total sense. Let's kind of move. So let's kind of move to kind of the last little bit of this conversation. And time flies when we're having fun. We're already at 30 minutes, which is crazy. Let's talk about forward thinking, right? So moving forward, I want to ask y'all, like, what are maybe some things that you all would like to see that you're still not getting with AI and accessibility? This is just more of kind of just like brainstorming here. Is there any area within accessibility you're like, man, if we could really do this with AI, that would really move the needle? Is there anything that comes to mind? Again, this was not on the questions, so we are obviously going off the cuff here. So I want to see if y'all have any thoughts on that.
So I really loved what Google I/O had there when they were broadcasting Google I/O this year, and they came up with this cool UI. For example, if you are just writing or just saying to Google out loud, saying that, "Oh, give me the tickets from this place to this place," and instead of I going and navigating to any website, they just actually opened the web page for me, did the selection for me, and directly booked the tickets for me. So without any navigations, without without any following the path that we currently have. So going to the last step directly via AI is what, and the UI that will be going out there is what I'm really looking forward to. With the minimum clicks, with the minimum navigations, we are able to achieve the day-to-day tasks that we want to do.
So what do you think the future of the web is going to look like? Like, is it going to be like, we're just going to talk to it and listen back? I mean, like, what is like, we're obviously brainstorming here, but I'm kind of no wrong answers.
I don't think so. There will be any screens in the future. I think it would
You don't
be
think so?
just some virtual. So for the thing that in W3, what Apple came up with, like they had that vision glasses where
Yes.
you are
Yeah.
seeing the thing in a very small periphery at the moment. But I think
Yeah.
later on there won't be any screens. We won't be having any mobiles or tablets or laptops. We will be just talking to our wearables, I think, and
Yeah.
having something in space out there doing some drag and drop stuff, and things would be done automatically for us. That's where
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
we're
That's pretty
going.
cool. Yeah.
I always
Go
think
ahead.
about the movie. I don't know if you all have seen the movie Minority Report. It was this
I
Tom
think I
Cruise
have. It
movie.
sounds familiar.
Okay, so but it's a lot what Navi described. It's like it's
Oh.
that movie where basically as they're walking through the city, each of the as they're walking, everything around them, the billboards, everything is changing, personalized for that person.
Yeah.
So either you're seeing it in your eye or it's not something that you're carrying anything. It's just all
Yeah.
around you. Your environment is changing
Okay.
because of who you are. So your experience is going to be different than my experience, Taylor.
Yeah, that's
Which is going to
interesting.
be,
That's interesting.
and I'm not having to really do anything, but it's taking because of my experience, who I am, where I come from, what I've been doing. It changes it for me, and I'm not having to do that. I think that's the ultimate personalization. And then I'm about it, like it's not like I'm having to do anything. It's just because of where I am and what I'm visiting and what I'm looking at that it's changing for me. We have a long way to go to get there, right? But you
Sure.
can see the steps of how it's totally possible now. I think when that movie came out, it was like, whoa, this is crazy.
Right.
But I would say now, I think it's been about 20 years. I think there's a lot of steps we've taken that you could see that is very achievable.
Yeah, I love that.
For
I love
example,
that.
whenever you are booking flights to India next, Taylor, you will be
Yeah.
getting the layover in
There you
Changi
go.
or in Dubai because
Yeah.
of this conversation.
Well, then I can just text you and be like, I'm finally here. Take a selfie.
Yeah.
Finally here. I love it. I want to ask this: if for anybody who listens now in the future and they're a leader in an organization and they're like, man, Navi and Diane had some really good thoughts here. We need to start being more aware around accessibility and bring it to the forefront. And whoever can take this first, you can. What are just some basic steps a team should do to look to use AI and accessibility, right? Like practical things. What should people keep in mind? What should people approach first? Didn't know if y'all have any thoughts on that. Like if you were to sit down with a leader of an organization, they're like, what should we start doing first? What would you tell them?
Okay, as an engineer, I can definitely say that
Sure.
um, it's it's hard to sell it to the upper management as an immediate gain when it comes to accessibility, because
Okay.
of course, when you are talking about accessibility, and we often talk about it doesn't make any difference in sales or the click rates of your product, and everyone
Right.
is talking
Yeah.
about
Yeah.
monetization when it comes to the leadership. But how I like to see it as, it's the classic chicken and egg problem, right? So unless and until you create things for everyone to use, you wouldn't know how much money it's bringing to you, right? So
Interesting.
taking the simple the elevator versus ramp example. So for example, if you are not building an elevator or ramp because you just say, oh, no one in wheelchair visits us, you
Right.
wouldn't know if accessibility is really bringing in that money to your website, because you have not
Interesting. I like that.
started developing for all. So I think that's the vision that we need to tell and broadcast to the leadership when it comes to monetization.
Yep.
Talking in the product life cycle, I think a lot of things are lost between design and engineering, because maybe
Mm,
design is developing things from an accessible point of view, but when it comes to engineering, it's lost in the translation. So I think finding those tools that everyone is doing their job from the very start when it comes to accessibility, and that translation is also being passed as the product is basically it's in that stage and then goes to the
yeah.
next stage. It's really very important. But that's from a design and engineering point of view. I would love to know what Dan thinks of it when it
Yeah.
comes
No,
to
that was good.
product
Yeah.
and
Diane, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, clearly what really related to what you're talking about, I think it starts with a mindset shift, really, about that accessibility. And you said it earlier at the beginning, is not an afterthought. It should be a
Right.
part of what you're designing in the beginning, and making sure that we talked about it. I was shocked when we did this airport project of how many people actually have accessibility issues. It is not a minority of the population. And when we actually shift our minds to think that actually most of our personas, most of the people using our products, our software, at some point are going to experience some kind of inaccessibility period or event in their use of our products, that when we start designing very intentionally with that in mind, and we document those decisions about accessibility as part of, from the very beginning, not as an afterthought, not brought up, then I think that's really where it's going to make a big difference in terms of building it in as part of what we do, for sure. And for me, just more generally about AI, you asked about sort of talking to leadership about what you can do. Honestly, most of the conversations, I've had a lot of conversations with senior leaders about AI, and as Nadia brought up, it's really hard at this point unless you can prove that it's going to improve your revenue or your competitive situation, which in some cases you can prove. Where
Right.
it's been a lot easier for leaders to demonstrate where AI helps them is in productivity gains. I mean, most people can really quantify and
Yeah.
demonstrate the ROI of, hey, we have 10 engineers and it takes 5 of them now to do this because we used AI to automate this. Or
Yeah.
I had a team of 3 marketing content creators. Well, now that I'm using AI to create a bunch of content, I have one person who's doing that, and I can spend that money doing other things. So I would say just AI in general, not just about accessibility, is that starting a business, starting looking at their sort of their productivity and how they're
Yeah.
doing and their processes now, it has been a much shorter, I'd say, path to saying and getting the organization using AI than it has been the proof point of, we're going to get more market share by doing
Right.
this.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Let me, I do want to ask this, and this may be kind of, we're kind of going back in time here for the beginning of the interview, but as somebody who, is not an expert in accessibility by any means, where do a lot of companies fall short? Like what are some basic things like companies like that you either consult with or have talked to, your friends in circles, and it's just like, bro, you got to fix this at least? Like, is there like some big things that folks aren't even considering that are just easy wins for an organization?
I mean, the two that come to mind for me are one, culture.
Yeah,
Because, I think that's one thing is that digital transformation change does not happen unless you change the culture,
I
right?
love
It's
that.
not,
I love
it's
that.
not just
Yeah,
about bringing tools in. Like you have to actually to change. So for leaders, it's about encouraging experimentation, encouraging not everyone in your organization is going to embrace AI. So, but the
yeah,
ones who do, great, support them. But the ones who don't, get them some education so they can decide, right? Like everyone's going to be at a different spot with AI. The other one Avi brought up earlier, which is probably the biggest one, is most people don't realize how important data is with AI. Most people feel like, to really get the most out of AI, the data that you use to train the models is really, really important. And so
hmm,
most people jump in and wonder why it's not working well, and then they throw it out, right? And what they don't
yeah,
realize, it's garbage in, garbage out. And so
sure,
the importance of data, we've been on a data revolution for many, many years. Well, this is just the next evolution of it. The better the data, the more representative the data that you have, the better the AI models are going to be. So data is probably the other one that I
I
find a
love
lot of
that.
people skipping that step and just jumping straight to what
Yeah,
can we do
yeah,
with AI.
I love that. I love that. Navi, any thoughts as we kind of wrap it up here?
Sure. I have one thought on this, and I think what is most important uh, thing that is required today is having those experts in that field to be a part of that organization. So,
Yes.
as we said that maybe AI is doing that job for us, but let's say I'm someone who is new to accessibility, and I will be just trusting the output that these AI agents are giving me, which may be the false narrative, and I might be feeling that I have fixed the accessibility issue on my website, but that's not entirely true, and that we already discussed about that for the last 40 minutes, right? So having that expert knowledge in the field that you are trying to fix with AI, be it any field, is really very crucial and really very important to do things the right way. And
Yes.
it's a cycle, right? So if you will have an expert in your field who is like maybe overlooking to that AI code that is generated, it will be going back to that feedback loop that your AI is being trained upon, and then it will start producing better results in time.
Mhm.
So yeah, that's what I feel.
I love that. That's awesome. As we wrap up here, any more final thoughts? Anything that's maybe popped into your brain that you're like, oh, I really want to share? If not, we can wrap it up. But I want to give it, give you all a chance to say one more thing if you have thought about anything.
Sure. I can just conclude by saying that
Yes.
we are in this massive hype cycle of AI. Um, AI is definitely helpful, as Dan pointed out, to increase productivity, to make sure that you are using lesser developers on the team. But everything needs to be taken with a pinch of salt. You need to be the final expert on the thing or the product that you are shipping out, whether we are just talking about accessibility or designing anything in real life. Use these AI agents to do that laborious task and be the final expert on that field to make that judgment. So.
I love that. That's great. Diane, any last closing thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think just related, don't be afraid of
Yeah.
AI. I
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
always want to tell people that, like, don't be afraid. It's not the Terminator movie. It doesn't have to be,
Yeah.
where, AI takes over the whole world unless we let it. And so I think this
Right.
is where Navir brings up that people are really important to making sure we guide the AI, and we also make sure that it's the right thing for us when we need it to. But I would just say embrace, educate yourself, don't run away from it. It's like all innovation and technology. It's not all bad, but it's also not all good. So the
Sure.
more you understand it and the more you expose yourself to it, the more you'll be able to see where you can use it. So I would just probably encourage people to kind of go explore, whether it's to use it to plan your next trip, or use it to research, where you want to go on that next trip. Like, start small. You don't have to start by innovating your business yet.
I love it. I love it. That's awesome. Well, again, thank y'all for watching. We appreciate y'all. Ladies, stay on so I can say bye to you backstage. But y'all have a good one. And we'll see you on the internet very soon. See y'all.